Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we are going to be taking a look and answering the question of what is the deal with the HIMAR rockets? If you've seen any news on this, you know that people are all worked up about the American-provided HIMARS artillery system. Well, what is it? Why is it so scary? And what is the big deal? Let's get into it. So first off, let's get, our boys at the Sun, not great on doing any reporting. I don't think I've ever heard them do actual, like war reporting, like talking to a person, but they love sharing videos. And frankly, they're probably making more money getting 2 million views of video than most of the war correspondents working in Ukraine. So let's take a look at this. This is the HIMARS in action. So let's back it up just a little bit. So you've got it is a 5-ton mounted rocket system, which is pretty impressive because a 5-ton is just a medium tactical vehicle that's meant to be just a cargo hauler, just a general purpose, haul goods from place to place. You can have a bunch of soldiers climb in the back and drive around. And so someone developed a rocket launch system that just can get hooked onto the back of this thing, driven into place, and then launch a giant rocket from it. So it's a pretty impressive weapon system that can be mounted to a pretty unimpressive vehicle package, right? So you can see here, it launches 2 powerful rockets, and you can see they're kicking off and traveling somewhere quite a distance away. That's a really high angle. And you can see it fires just round after round after round. So it is a rocket artillery system, but what I think is so significant, yep, they really love showing these things launch. Of course, they just need to be launched from an open air. And this is the chief advantage of being mounted to a 5-ton is you can fire and then you can skedaddle. As we've seen a lot of Russian artillery and a lot of conventional Ukrainian artillery, they have to stay in one place. You set it up, you deploy it, you mount it, you level the ground, you get everything zeroed, and then you run your fire missions. This seems like much, much quicker, especially launching it from a roadway, any open roadway, any open field, anywhere these 5-tons can go, this rocket system can be deployed. So that's a huge tactical advantage because basically you will be gone by the time counter battery fire shows up, if you're even in range of counter battery fire. And we're going to talk about the technical capabilities of this in just a sec. But like I said, it's good to see what I'm talking about. And that is this. See, mounted to these 5.5 ton trucks, right? And runs probably as a system of 3. And you can just see how very, very effective when you have a short range, basically a ballistic missile launcher that you can mount to the back of what's basically a overpowered Peterbilt. Maybe not even that overpowered. Okay, so now let's talk about the M142, 1400 M142 HIMARS. That stands for High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. And it is a light multi-purpose rocket launcher, right? Developed in the 90s. And it can carry, each pod carries either 6 GMLR rockets, 2 PRSMs, or 1 ATCSM in the family of medium tactical vehicles. And you can see here, when we talk about the FMTV, this is what it is. This is literally just a Peterbilt, obviously with some bigger tires, better suspension, armored cab. It's nothing really special. It's been in the arsenal for, I'm going to say, let's see, when did it enter service? 1996. So it's got 30 years of service. It's made by Steyr. Nothing, it's not a game changer. Pretty standard stuff. So the fact that it can be converted into a super lethal mobile artillery, rocket artillery system, really, tactical ballistic missile system. Yeah. So it got field tested in Afghanistan and also served in the Syrian civil war, the counter ISIS operations, and is now getting more operational time in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's comparatively cheap at $5.1 million. That's the cost of the launcher and all the ammo required. So really not a terribly expensive system, right? Which is good. You don't want to have, systems be things like super carriers, right? Where the system itself is $1 billion system. So losing even one is a massive tragedy. That's just not, that makes you reluctant to deploy, your weapon systems to war zones when they're too valuable, too rare, and too expensive. And at 5 million a pop, this really isn't that pricey. So what is the GMLRS? What is the range? Well, this is what I think is so cool. Obviously, here's the manufacturer of the GMLRS. This is the rocket that the HIMARS can fire 6 of at a time in a standard sort of pod. What does it do? Well, Lockheed built a precision fires go-to round. And what this can do is it's a precision strike rocket. It's, talks about being all-weather, deployable, long-range, surface-to-surface, precision strike capability, and it can actually is guided. It's guided MLRS rockets, which is important, these are smart bombs. So as you've probably seen, if you've looked at the battlefields in Ukraine, you notice that a lot of these artillery fire can be impressively accurate, but it oftentimes is more about area destruction. You see farm fields littered with craters. That's because artillery is not precision guided. There's no such thing as a smart artillery round. It goes where the math says it'll go, and there's always a little bit of variability, which means that it can take a lot to deal damage, and it can be really hard to strike precise targets. When you have a guided rocket, it means that there has some sort of internal guidance system that's going to help get it precisely to the exact target it needs to be at. So, yeah, of course, with unless you have troops on the ground guiding the rocket in, which is something that, say, U.S. forces will commonly do. They'll have either a drone or, even better, an actual team, like a special forces team or a team of forward observers or scout or Cav scouts. They will sit and they will laze that target and they will guide those missiles right onto the target. But when you can't, you can still take advantage of that precision guidance by targeting the specific locations of a vulnerable building. The other advantage, not just in that it's guided, but it has an incredible range. So it has an extended range of about 150 kilometers on some of the most recent stuff, but even the standard one has a range, let's see, I want to say it was 87 meters or 87 kilometers, right? A huge distance for an artillery system. Let's see if it tells us here exactly what sort of ranges it has. It is... No, they really want... Okay, I guess they're really selling the fact that... Oh, here you go. The Unity variant, sounds like the more standard one, has a range exceeding 70 clicks, which is massive, a massive range. When we look at, let's take a look at actually the deployment map, and I'll give you guys an idea of just sort of the ranges that we're talking about, where the ranges that this system places in danger. So we look at the scale here, we can see that 5 kilometers, right? Let's give them, okay, there we go, 30 kilometers, right? So we're looking at 1, 2. So literally a system in basically Kramatorsk can put rockets into Severodonetsk. That is extremely significant for Ukrainian forces. And as we've seen, what it's being employed to do is to disrupt Russian logistics. Here's an example of a Russian ammunition depot that was hit earlier today. Yeah, that's a lot of secondary explosives. Now that is not the rocket. That is the rocket blowing up Russian munitions. So the HIMARS hits and all the other munitions detonate. That is a lot of Russian artillery that's not going to get fired at Ukrainian forces. So what is the point of all that? Well, the point is that we can't, it sounds like the intelligence, the targeting cycle, the ability to find a target, assign a system to it, and engage that target with the system. It sounds like there's, a little bit of delay. So it's unlikely that they'll be able to target, say, massing enemy troop formations, right? They're only still static for a few hours. But something like an ammunition depot is not going to go anywhere. It's going to take weeks to relocate, that sort of thing. So what they will do is the Ukrainian forces, or even sometimes Western forces, might identify Russian ammunition depots, pass the grid coordinate to an HIMARS to the Ukrainians, who will then assign an HIMARS crew to engage it. They will bring the HIMARS crew to a location that puts them in range, again, up to 80 kilometers behind behind Ukrainian lines, very safe, well outside the range of Russian artillery. And the HIMARS will go and target ammunition depots, barracks, motor yards, repair facilities, rail lines, anything that's going to disrupt the Russians' logistic ability to fight. And it can be a tremendous, tremendous advantage when, as we've talked about, Russians' supply lines are already fairly compromised. We've seen it in the daily updates where Russia has made major gains in Ukraine, but now is forced to pause, bring its logistics up to the fight, refit troops, move out wounded troops, and get new rounds, new munitions, new artillery forces into place. Even things like fuel for tanks. All of this shows that that is something that the Russian forces are very vulnerable to, is logistics and supply issues. So targeting munitions depots, supply depots is a great strategy and a great use of this HIMARS system. It's one of the few, again, because it's rockets, unlike fighter or bomber aircraft, right? It's easy. The risk is low of flying, say, sending rockets behind enemy lines, in contrast to, say, the deep strike aircraft, which it's not clear that either side is really rolling out a ton of aircraft right now. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Of course, if you want to see some breakdowns of combat footage that's too spicy for YouTube, check out the Patreon. Thanks to my Lieutenant tier patrons. I'll see you in the next one.